If you're watching on TV and you see that red bouncing ball coming in and then a lightning bolt coming to hit it, I'm sure you know what that is. We are a zone where we like to be an open forum. We lay down our swords. We don't really want to do anything except talk and be able to talk about all kinds of sides. There are no sides in a circle on any subject. And we hope that we come to more and more common ground. One of our sponsors here is my brother, who's a head of the Center for Common Good. And there's got to be, I don't know how we ended up both having the same brain. Maybe. It's just something where people talk and can talk about things without any prejudice about, taking sides. My guest today is, some people say he's controversial. Other people just call him Uncle Fed. I have Federal Reserve Brown with me. Thank you for coming to our show.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
It's a pleasure. I just want to make sure we get the volumes right on everyone. Okay. Now, when I hear your name, the first thing that comes to mind is Federal Reserve. Those things don't have any value. And then I think, wait, we should probably start by coming to understand how you came upon your name. I know that you've been here on Maui, how many years? Many years?
It's 1983.
1983, and I got here in 88. And I've had a friend who I lived with, actually, for a couple of years named Jim Kimmel. And Reverend Jim Kimmel had these videos that he wanted me to watch. I guess we're going to get to that later. One called Missing Links, and another one about the deep state and all that's going on in our world. So I can only imagine that as we're going to be talking, you're going to help me better understand people's roles in this and alleged things, and some proofs, I'm hoping.
Yeah, Reverend Kimmel was an extraordinary man.
He was.
He was a brilliant guy. I sat with him many times at the Native Hawaiian or the lawful Hawaiian government meetings.
Right.
And we both promoted 911 Missing Links whenever we could, because this is a very unique documentary. It's put out by Michael Delaney and Christopher Boleyn, and it's incredibly well researched. No one's like Julian Assange ever been able to find fault with it or sue him for defamation or misinformation or anything. And 911 Missing Links is uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Well, I think the biggest, we all know, it's uncomfortable because it points fingers very directly. And like you said, things that are not refutable. Well, let's wait on that a little, because we're going to have a lot of time here to talk about stuff. How did you come upon the name Federal Reserve Brown? I'm sure your mother didn't say, I'm going to call my baby Federal.
No. I'm the son of a Denver policeman. My name was Donald Michael Brown. I was Donald Brown Jr., basically. But in 2007, I got deported to the United States. And the immigration officer...
to the United States.
Deported to the United States. The immigration officer said, Mr. Brown, you have an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army. That's a lifelong fraternity, and we don't know you're still not working with them. So you're going home to the United States, and when you Americans deal honestly with 9/11, you can come back, and not until. And I was put in leg irons and handcuffs and flown to Los Angeles. And
were you sharing this information there? That's a fairly strong thing to be deported to the United States. Deported
starting
with a place you were a destination? Were they saying you're going here for something?
Yes, and I objected strenuously, vehemently. And I also had a letter from Australian immigration saying I was allowed back in the country. I was banned from Australia for 5 years for overstaying a visitor's visa, a 3-month visitor visa. I stayed for 6 years once and then 3 years a second time, and they got the shits, as they say, and said, oh, you can't come back for a while, you naughty boy. But anyway, in my stay in New Zealand, I'd written them and asked permission to come back to Australia, and they had heard of my plight in New Zealand and said, yes, no problem, and everything was good. But nonetheless, they said, no, you're going to the United States. And anyway, that's a whole other story.
But deported is different than extradited, or is it?
I didn't have any wants or warrants. It was definitely a thing over my having been in the U.S. Army prohibits you from getting citizenship in a lot of countries. And the United States has the same thing. If you've served in a foreign armed forces, you can come here and get married and get permanent residency and everything, but you cannot become a citizen.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In 2007, I was one of 5,000 Americans deported to the United States, and specifically over 9/11. Now, my case in New Zealand, before I got deported here, I had engaged in a 7-year battle with my next-door neighbor, the Dow Chemical Company of the USA.
Quite a neighbor.
Yeah, terrible neighbor.
Dow Chemical had plantations, or what was it?
Dow Chemical and Monsanto both set up company outposts in foreign countries where it's easier to manipulate their EPA or their version of the EPA. They can get away with polluting and doing things that they could not do in the United States. In the case of New Zealand, my next-door neighbor had large drains from underneath the factory where they produced 2,4,5-T, also known as Agent Orange or trichloropheniol, and these pipes went into the ocean and discharged waste from making Agent Orange.
Wow.
Yeah. Really brutal.
Well, I mean, that's brutal. What years are we talking?
1997 to 2007.
It was already banned in the United States for a long time, right?
We banned it, yeah, in the early 80s, late 70s. We banned production of 2,4,5-T, and they did in most every country in the world because of the dioxin contaminant. This is what caused all the problems with the Vietnam people, and it is a specific dioxin that is what's known as radiomimetic. It mimics radiation.
Wow.
That's why when I've tried to explain to people how dangerous this dioxin is, I compare Hiroshima and Nagasaki with South Vietnam and New Zealand, and we have the identical same birth defects and cancers from these exposures. And
when I hear recently, there happens to be a young lady who actually works here at Akaku, who was exposed to a chemical through Monsanto. Different chemical, but same kind of issues of chemicals that are out flying in the air and affecting people's lives.
Precisely.
So I guess you must have had quite a battle there.
Yeah, I did. I was, and there's a documentary on YouTube called Let Us Spray, and it's about a 90-minute documentary, and it goes into great detail about what all the New Zealand people have gone through with their 50-year legacy with Agent Orange. But it also explains how, to make a good analogy, it would be like if we went out in the parking lot and changed the spare tire on the truck and said, now it's a motorcycle. This is the logic that these Dow Monsanto types use. So the things that are causing birth defects here and in Kauai and where they're using this experimental sprays are much the same. They've just reorganized some chemicals, molecular chain structure, and called it something else when it's still pretty much the same.
Did you have any kind of traction on your efforts against them?
It comes and goes in bits and pieces, much like Dr. Lauren Pang said on the interview on Democracy Now! When we'd passed a law on Maui that you can't grow Frankenstein stuff outdoors anymore. He said, it's like an abused kid. You're used to getting beaten all the time. When you finally get a victory, it catches you off guard. Of course, Monsanto whipped out a judge in Oahu and said, Judge Curran says you can't make laws at the local level, and too bad.
Isn't it amazing? That's something that I think we all, no matter what the subject, if you make a decision at a local level, state level has priority, and then Fed has priority over that. So it's very difficult to be an independent, wise, Maui. If we want to be self-sustainable, get rid of pesticides, grow our own stuff, do it in our own unique way, we can't do it. We want to make marijuana legal, we can't do it.
It had never been illegal in the first place. If we look at the language that made marijuana illegal, it's embarrassing. We outlawed pretty much a harmless plant because white women were going to have sex with Negroes, Filipinos, and entertainers.
Oh, no,
now, I've said numerous times when I've had encounters with the Maui police, are you going to get up in court and recite Henry Anslinger's 1937 Christmas Eve address to Congress? Are you really worried about white women having
sex? Just for you guys out there in radio land, and maybe television, I am here with Federal Reserve Brown, and I'm Jason Schwartz, and we're talking about anything that comes to mind. Harry Anslinger? Anslinger. Was he the head of the FBI at the time? Or
I think so.
One of those kind of things. And so that's what he said, that this marijuana that will make...
As Prohibition ended, they had all these police who were used to chasing alcohol all over, suddenly had nothing to do.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of going into something productive to do for a living, we decided to make this plant illegal, which gave them a great way to go after Mexicans and African Americans who preferred cannabis over alcohol, which
and white people.
Sensible people do. Yeah.
Right. Now that it's become a business, check to see the racial breakdown on who owns it.
Whitey loves pot just as much as everyone else. This is stupid to begin with. But
yeah. Now, I'm not sure how to approach this subject, because when you just said that you were deported because of 9/11, you weren't in any way involved, but were you educating them? I mean, why would that be the reason? If you got a thing like this next door, I would think that would be, they're looking for some reason to get rid of you because you're a
I think it was
thorn.
It was a dual purpose. They got rid of this guy who was having a one-man war on the Dow Chemical Company and they also got to send a message to others about 9/11. On 9/11, I'm sitting in a sports bar in New Zealand. We weren't drinking in the morning. It's 4 in the afternoon when it's 9 in New York. And we watched the planes fly into the buildings again and again. It's flat screen TVs were new, and they're up on the wall behind the bartender, and they're showing it again and again, over and over. And about an hour later, one of these buildings comes straight down, not over, but straight down. And there's shocks, gasps of horror and everything. And 15 minutes later, the other one did the same thing. And I kid you not, it was like a chorus in a church or a choir. But this bar full of dairy farmers said, holy shit, someone blew up the buildings the airplanes flew into.
That's because they're wise. Yeah. Buildings don't go straight down unless you're doing it by design.
Besides that, it was the notion there was fire. We saw all the fire from the kerosene go up in the initial fireball. There wasn't kerosene, went down elevator shafts all the way to the... I mean, some of these suggestions are... They're not
absurd.
Only asinine, they're absurd, they're criminal.
And I actually, years later, sat with an engineer, and he was trying to explain to me how that was not a controlled demolition. When, in fact, let me bring it up now, because this Missing Links video, I had the good opportunity to see it, and I've looked on the web, and I don't see it. I don't know why. Is it available?
It's got its own website because YouTube and others take it down.
Is that the thing with Greg Braden, or no? There's a guy named Greg Braden that calls something.
No, the name's familiar.
Missing Links. He's a psychologist and I want to say a counselor toward bettering your emotional balance guy. Anyway, but when I said put Missing Links in, that's what came up. And I thought that wasn't it.
No,
it wasn't what I saw.
The same thing with Let Us Spray. Now, when you put Let Us Spray in Google for a long time, all that came up was the documentary on New Zealand and Agent Orange. Now, Let Us Spray brings up all kinds of products and numerous other books called Let Us Spray. And they're doing everything they can to bury this documentary.
Yeah. Well, let's, if you don't mind, I bet you wouldn't mind. Missing Links, we were just talking about this 9/11 situation that you saw in the bar. I was also up. I had a couple of ladies that were staying in my living room. I was helping them out at the time, and I heard a scream. And I went in and saw what you saw. But what was really strange, and I still don't know what it was, the day before, when I was sitting working in my place, a phone call came, and I didn't know where the number was from, and it said, tell people to stay out of buildings in New York. Now, that was it, and then it was gone.
That was something connected with Odigo messaging system.
What is that?
Odigo messaging system. It's like a texting messaging platform, and it's hosted out of Israel. Odigo messaging, and the messages that went out the day before that, like you received, were all explained in 911 Missing Links, and that he goes through, Mr. Balloon and Delaney go back and verify the timestamps and who all this happened, and they even talked to the head of Odigo, who confirmed that yes, we sent that message out at that time, but it didn't originate within us. Someone obscure put this message in, and
why would I have nothing to do with any of that. I'm Jewish. So it was almost like a signal. My name is Schwartz, you almost can't deny. You think that guy's Jewish. So I always wondered, what the heck is that?
Someone opted you in without your knowledge.
And they were basically giving me a heads up.
Yes.
So when this happened the next day, I didn't think of it really because everything was quite a lot. But it just really always spooked me. That's the thing when I met Jim Kimmel, and he shared with me this video, and I don't know if it's really long, so I don't know if I saw the part where you're talking about. But they talked about this guy that owned the buildings that insured them only a little while before for billions of dollars, and how they talked about Building 12 before the thing went down. I mean, all kinds of excitement.
Building 7, yeah. That's the ultimate smoking gun is World Trade Center number 7 at 5:20 p.m. No one watches that and thinks, 19 guys with box cutters did that. But getting back to Odigo messaging, an interesting thing is Al Franken, Saturday Night Live fame, became a senator.
Yeah.
He openly admits, I got the Jew call, he calls it. I got warned to stay away from, he had an office in the World Trade Center, and he's, you can find it easily. He wrote a book called Lying Liars and the Lies They Tell or something. I've got it at home. But he says he got the call the day before 9/11 to stay away from his office, and these are serious things that need to be looked into, because the notion Al-Qaeda warned you and Al Franken to stay away from the building is ridiculous.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
That's right.
And I never actually, maybe I just haven't been looking close, I never heard anyone else got a call. That's very supportive for me to say, hey, let's investigate to see what's happening here.
Yeah.
I'm sure you also, someone, when I mentioned I was having you on, they said, make sure to tell him that the Mossad is not really the Israeli people. They're not even really, all these groups are deep, what do we call them? Deep
state.
People that have a vested interest, and they get themselves into different groups and lead things in different ways, but they have their own agenda. What's your exploration into that? Have you looked at that?
The Mossad is the CIA of the country Israel, basically.
But when activity happens, we've all kind of watched through the years, that name gets thrown around. In 1973, I was living in Los Angeles, and I had a roommate named Ned Ferraro. And Ned Ferraro wanted to borrow my gun. When he came back, he told me, he wasn't supposed to, but he told me he went to train the commandos in Israel on how to do secret missions there, because he'd been in the American military. His uncle was in politics in Los Angeles, and this guy wasn't on the records or any. You could never find him. No tracking. I know he exists because he was my roommate, but the word was that he got killed on one of the missions there, and I never could find him. He took my gun, and he had gotten rid of the safety, turned it into a military. I haven't had experience in the military, but I guess turned it into a always works kind of weapon. That was my first sign of experience into knowing there are secret missions. That was 1974. Yep. So this has been going on. Whatever's going on has been going on a long time.
Yeah, it's quite.
Any reason why?
9/11 is many decades in the planning. That's not. It just didn't pop into someone's plan and they pulled it off in a couple months. This is many years in the making.
Right. So when you wanted to share these things, why did they run into a problem? Do you have any ideas? I'm sorry if you don't want to talk about stuff, that's okay.
Faceted reasons for this, especially when we get into the Jewish issue. It would be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of American Jews that Israel attacked the United States on 9/11. Nonetheless, that's what happened.
Meanwhile, I'm an American Jew, and although, I want to like the state of Israel or whatever, I'm not an Israeli, and if I saw and heard something like that, I would be very much interested in rousting it out.
Yeah.
But you're right, the ones with the money and the power that are Jewish here in the United States put up this giant block.
Yep.
I always think maybe it was the approach.
No, there's behind the scenes more than an approach. And Cynthia McKinney, our recent congressman, I don't know which state she's from, but she's come out and said, there's no way to get into Congress or the Senate without signing this pledge to Israel. The well-being of Israel comes ahead of the United States. And that's what the bulk of our congressmen is. They're dual national Israeli and or Jewish.
Well, that's really interesting. I never heard that before. You know who we could ask? We could ask, maybe we'll get him on here. You know Brian Schatz? Have you ever met him?
I think so.
He is right now in the U.S. Senate. He took over that seat.
Schatz.
And I met him way back when I was more active as a Democrat. This was years ago. And I met him. I really liked the guy. He seemed like a really honorable guy. So I'd like to, get and explore some of these kind of things, only because, how did you hear? I can't imagine. Why would you want dual citizenship? You wouldn't want. You have to.
It's the basis of what's called infiltration, taking over from the inside.
Wow, that's a crazy story. See, I think of that as Israeli more than Jewish.
Yes.
Just as a reference.
And I can see this divide opening up in the Jewish community in the United States. Many are now realizing, Israel is a poison pill for us. We better declare our loyalties to this country if we've got a choice.
Did you have any kind of stuff about Netanyahu? I know we've heard for a long time that he was a problem.
Yeah, he's always been a problem. And just the nefarious things he's got up to behind the scenes are... it's outright criminal, but yeah, the manipulation of our Congress, for him to come over uninvited and to walk into our Senate and get 29 standing ovations to see Mazie Hirono and these others just jump up and down 29 times for a foreign leader, that's offensive.
Yeah, I can appreciate that myself.
We don't give our own president 29 standing ovations, but this guy... that screams volumes about, like James Traficant and numerous others have said, Israel completely controls our government, foreign and domestic policy.
Still.
To this day.
That's worthy of explanation.
If Israel doesn't control the United States or use us for its defense, it's going to cease to exist very quickly because it's expanded so far beyond its original borders that it's just taken over all of Palestine, and you've now got people saying Palestine wasn't a country to begin with, and, other absurd things when it was on the map for hundreds of years. It's just...
You ever wonder... I always wonder why people can't realize that we have enough.
Yeah, when is enough enough?
And when are you and I going to be brothers like we should be brothers, And why aren't we realizing that there's plenty. There is plenty. It's a matter of how the wealth is distributed.
And it's not so much wealth. The interview with Aaron Russo was very poignant and accurate. He explained, the guy interviewing him, I forget who it was, he said, why is this? What was all this for? And he said, well, it's to have absolute control over everyone. They want everyone on Earth chipped. And if you say something or do something they don't like, well, they turn your chip off and you're not buying groceries or paying rent or doing anything anymore. And behind the scenes, that's what they're working towards.
Well, in this internet age, it seems like it's more and more possible. I always found it intriguing that on my credit card is a little chip, and on there is enough information to sink a battleship.
You bet.
That's a really upsetting notion.
People can always say things regarding privacy and this and that. And my response is, Edward Snowden's not on vacation. He said, our devices, including the dishwasher, are listening to us, and they're recording stuff and sending it away. And I had great objections to getting my dog a microchip. I went to the mainland for the first time in 25 years for a drive around, and I wasn't aware of all the things regarding taking my dog with me, but she had to get microchipped to come back. And I'd said, please leave it lightly under the skin so I can retrieve it. And then it said, what's the problem? What's, this, that can help find your dog. And I basically said, if I want my dog making phone calls, I'll buy it a phone.
I like that line, but... And how did he react? He let...
His assistant said, I understand what you're talking about. He hadn't watched the same documentaries I had, but yes, this chip technology, which is great if your dog's lost. it's not too great if you want it doing things with your private life that you didn't approve of. And this is what Edward Snowden was pointing at. It was like, hey, they've already instituted all these programs. There's no due process. There's no search warrants or anything. They've just basically swept the Fourth Amendment under the rug, which they did on 9/11. The Patriot Act nullifies the U.S. Constitution. And when I hear someone refer to Second Amendment or First Amendment, I remind them those things are long gone, dead. And now recently we've passed HB 720, which is, as you know, it's any criticism of Israel or backing the boycott of this country can land you in prison for 20 years.
Wow.
If I want to boycott a country, that's my version of free speech. I'm not buying your stuff, and I shouldn't be risking prison sentence for not buying something from Israel or encouraging other people to not buy stuff from Israel.
Well, that's interesting. I don't mean to interrupt, but we are going to take a break. I'm here with Federal Reserve Brown. I'm Jason Schwartz on the Neutral Zone, and we are going to check in with people like Maui Car Rental and David Bryan and No Koi Motors and Come On Alone. They're the sponsors of our show and here at Akaku and KAKU Radio. So we will be right back in a couple of minutes, so hang on for us again. The Neutral Zone with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to sincerely thank David Bryan for his support. David was founder and head of school at New Road School in Santa Monica, California, and is the board chair at the Ojai Foundation and on the board for Brave New Films. The Neutral Zone is heard live Mondays at 11 a.m. here on KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui, and again on Saturdays at 7 a.m., as well as on TV and on MauiNeutralZone.com.
Do you have a non-profit event coming up that you would like the public to know about? Is there an important social issue for which you'd like to raise awareness? Akaku can help you get the word out. You can come in and record a 1-minute public service announcement for the subject of your choice at no cost to you. Slots are available Mondays and Wednesdays between 1 and 3. Remember, it's free, so call 871-5554 and reserve your spot today.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
This is your radio host, Miriam Laraway from Latino Connection. Connect with us and KAKU 88.5 every Friday at 12 p.m. and a replay on Saturday at 3 p.m. In this show, we explore the Latin community in Hawaii and every Latin country and their traditions, and also music from popular Latin music artists right here on KAKU 88.5, the voice of Maui.
Hi, I'm Jason Schwartz, host of The Neutral Zone. KAKU is a listener-supported station. This means that all of the great programs you hear, like mine, are sponsored by you as well as our underwriters. If you would like to help keep the voice of Maui talking loud and clear, go to kakufm.org/donate today and give. And don't miss The Neutral Zone Mondays at 11 a.m. on 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. We are back. This is Jason Schwartz on the Neutral Zone with Federal Reserve Brown. Thank you for being here with me. You know, you can find these shows again at MauiNeutralZone.com, or you can go up to YouTube and put in Federal Reserve Brown, Jason Schwartz, and it'll come up. And you can find it on Facebook page of KAKU Radio, KAKU 88.5 FM. They let me know in a very certain way that those people I mentioned aren't sponsors now. In fact, No Koi Motors is a sponsor. And David Bryan, this is the end of his month. So they are sponsors and have paid their money. But I consider them a circle of friends, because when someone puts up money to help support my show, once they're in my camp, they're in my camp.
You're a sponsor for life.
Well, they're not sponsors, they're friends.
Yes.
And I find that it's the afterburn on these shows. It's like, I'm hoping that all these shows have an opportunity to be heard by people after the day we're on the air, because we're only a 100-watt station, just like the kids in Paia have the kids club there near, as you're coming into Bahia. They're a 100-watt low-power station. So I'm thinking that it's the afterward that is going to be the most powerful. And so I hope people will stop and hear this show and say, hey, how do you find out about that?
Yeah.
And go explore for themselves on the subject that we talk about.
The wonderful effects of Ripple.
So, how did you get so motivated about this? I mean, you must have, I don't know what your work was before, but you speak eloquently. You don't put things out unless you have a basis for it. So I guess you say, if someone's pointing a finger at you, and if you say Jew, 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 and the Jews, but if you say Israeli, or if you say specifics, that's the reason they didn't sue those guys, right?
Exactly.
Because everything was documented.
Mm-hmm.
So this is many years later. Where are we now? I mean, anything's going on now that are of issue? I know Monsanto and Dow Chemical are still playing their, I want to say,
what they've gotten away with here. I've long said if the mothers of kids on Maui understood fully and comprehended what Monsanto was doing, they would storm that place and shut it down. There would be no more of this experimenting on people. And they have basically rendered this island a test tube and all of its inhabitants lab rats. I've had numerous headbutts, shall we say, with the Maui Police Department, and that I point out that in violating informed consent is a criminal offense. It's not a civil matter, and it's not an environmental issue. When you're driving down the highway in Hawaii and Maui, and you breathe in human hepatitis from the corn, you're having your informed consent violated. Not only you're breathing in something very dangerous. And this is what that judge took away when Judge Curran, who has Monsanto connections, told the people of Maui, you can't make a law like that. It was obscene. That's just added more to the criminality of this company. And it's always going back to, again, the beginnings. They say, Monsanto was a Fortune 500 or was one of the first companies, this and that. Actually, it goes back further than that. Benjamin and Isaac Monsanto were two Jewish slave traders who set up shop in New Orleans and sold black people.
Well, that's interesting. Monsanto were two Jewish guys?
Benjamin and Isaac Monsanto is where all this started.
That's very interesting. See, when I think of that, just because I'm Jewish, I don't feel any...
Yeah, and this is the danger in...
It shouldn't be taken personally. We're talking about two individuals that started
nothing
this
to
whole
do with
thing.
modern times at all.
No, nothing at all.
And this is a real issue, is all Jewish people getting tar brushed with this nightmare. And this is one of my most ardent supporters is a Dr. Alan Sabrowski. He's an incredibly educated man. He's a Jewish person who was an ex-Marine. He was in Vietnam. He had a lot of action. He's also a teacher at West Point at the War College. So he's not one to be taken lightly. And his interviews are brilliant. He explains in detail with Christopher Blinn how Israel did 9/11 and how they've gotten away with it to this day.
These things still available up on the web?
Yes.
I guess maybe after this show you'll help me accumulate some web addresses.
Yes.
Because I know that this subject has got to be explored more. Most people would like to. Whether we have the power to make the change...
At least we can understand it.
At least we can understand it. Because right now, I mean, I don't know why I'm putting it in now, but the power to make the change. I've had an issue in the last couple of weeks where someone broke into my car, broad daylight. We hear about these stories, and no matter which way I tell it, someone tells me about someone that's had a problem. But I did my own little upfront homework. The police haven't even had it assigned yet, and I have a picture of a guy
using your credit card,
using my credit card, and buying stuff to make ice. And it would seem like everyone should take the time to go up and see who this guy is, and when you see him, call the police and give them a report number 19-042841, and they'll tie it with other people with their problems, because people have already spotted this guy stealing car in Kula. Yep. We all have to use our social media in a more, I call it, aggressive way to do some social good, not only bitch about each other. I can say that because that's a female dog.
Yep.
But, on radio we're restricted on what we can say. But surely, I think that we need to somehow, all of us, be responsible to each other and root out these problems.
That's a brilliant thing to point out. And Jason, when you and I were both young, there was something we heard of all the time that's been shoved aside and silenced and discouraged anymore, and that's citizens' arrests.
I remember
we
that.
have the right to arrest these people. You don't have to be someone with a badge to arrest someone.
But you have to have the capacity to stop someone who's got a knife and all kinds of other...
Precisely.
It's a kind of a dangerous territory. But citizens' arrest is... I remember that was very popular. It happens
often, actually. It happens somewhere today. We just won't hear about it because police departments don't like being undermined, I guess it was, even though we're, in effect, assisting them.
Well, what I was told was that their worry is vigilantism.
Yeah, that's what
they
will
all become Charles Bronson and go out with weapons and start...
I was all told, if you arrest someone, you can be charged with kidnapping. And I've said, well, who arrests someone and takes them to the police station? You look kind of stupid in court charging me with kidnapping when I arrest this guy for a crime. We catch him breaking into Jason's car. Zip tie, handcuff him, and escort him to the police station. That's not kidnapping. That's arresting.
Ties. I like that idea. Well, anyway, I just know that I'm very sensitive these days because I'm finding that the system is not working as quickly or as efficiently as I would like. And I'm hoping citizens will take more initiative, not to get physical, but to take more initiative to be on the lookout for this guy.
It's an issue.
And others.
And to be fair, a lot of people do get it. You catch that guy in the process of breaking into your car, you're more likely to take some form of justice right there and then as opposed to stay calm and escort him to jail where he belongs. And this is where the police are trained to not get involved, and sometimes they do anyway, emotionally, and act out, as we see. But that's basically the crux of that, is doing citizens' arrest takes a lot of restraint on yourself, especially if you're the victim arresting a perpetrator. Does. And likewise, you find someone raping your wife, you're not going to be inclined to calmly take them to the police station.
Which is why they don't want people to be so involved. And I appreciate that. But maybe we should give them more money and hire more detectives so we can jump on. I've just really been bent out of shape by this process. It's not been comfortable.
A lot of this, and not just marijuana, all of it. The whole war on drugs has been basically a fraud. It's not the government's business what you or I put into our bodies, be it baking soda, bong hits, or bullets. You want to commit suicide? That's nobody's business. This whole notion of saying, you got high, so you've committed a crime, this, again, it's born out of, a lot of this is born out of Christianity. And the problem they found with marijuana was it causes people to think. And this is especially detrimental if you've relied on everyone being ignorant and believing in talking snakes and all this sort of thing to go with Christianity, and suddenly they're smoking marijuana and saying, look, I can be a good person without that nonsense in church every Sunday and fear of hell and burning and this and that. You don't need that to be a good person. Their pews empty, their coffers empty, and we've seen that over the last 2 decades. Church attendance has dropped right through and it's because they didn't come along with the times and modernize. And that's a good core of what's gone on in our justice system. People who have made laws with ulterior motives, and they stuck. And it's kind of like when you made a mistake so big, the apology's too big to make, so we just keep making the mistake as an easier way out.
Well, it sounds like Maui County.
Yes. An interesting thing, because Chicago, or not Chicago, but all of Illinois just legalized recreational marijuana.
Really?
And when they legalized recreational marijuana, they expunged all the criminal convictions and marijuana convictions in the past.
And they have half open at the jail, right?
Precisely. Their population goes, we locked up all these people who weren't criminals to begin with. Now their lives are wrecked and everything. So I think Illinois expunging the criminal convictions of marijuana crimes is its foresight is ahead because they can see what's happening in Colorado, and all these people who've had their lives destroyed by having a bit of marijuana are now seeking recompense in, you destroyed my life for a plant that shouldn't have been illegal in the first place. So there's class action lawsuits forming and all this for people who, some people who just got caught with a little bit of marijuana really.
I don't mean to be funny, but I'm a little sensitive because the Christians, we don't want them coming back and attacking you. We're not saying that there's a problem with their religion. We're talking about the inversion of the idea that you are God into there's a God somewhere else and you're going to be punished in some way. I don't really know how to refute that one. That is worthy of some dialogue, but not by us, maybe with a couple of pastors and things like that. I must tell you, when we're talking here, I'm thinking of my old friend Jim Kimmel. He shared with me the Urantia book, which he studied for, 47, 48 years. And the fourth section of that book is the life and teachings of Jesus. I think it should be mandatory reading for every pastor in this country because it's incredibly beautiful, I want to call it expansion of what these people have really made their life focus. So, although I always hear, that you can't read any other books except the Bible, in strict ways, I found that to be incredibly beautiful and really put Jesus in a great light, a full light.
Put him in the proper context. And we need to remember also in the 30s and 40s, the Bible was rewritten into what's now called the Schofield Bible. And it's changed things drastically. Just certain words here and there were changed. But the Bible that you find in your Christian churches now is nothing close to what we'd say is the Urantia Bible or the teachings of Jesus, which were much in line with Buddhism. Share compassion and knowledge. That's your mission in life, and it shouldn't need more than that. That should give you a full dish for every day, all day. There's a lot of compassion needed and a lot of knowledge being spread.
When I keep coming back to the focus because whenever I heard your name, I always heard you were complaining about something, and there's nothing wrong with complaining. So far when I'm here talking to you, you're a very reasonable guy.
If I'm complaining about something, it's something that needs complaining about.
But you're a strong, very convicted, or how would we call it, person who really, to change your name to Federal Reserve, why did you pick those words?
That is a multi-purpose political stunt at the end of the day.
Okay.
It's people say, is that really your name? And I say, yes. Can I lend you your own money? It should say U.S. Treasury on the U.S. dollar, not Jewish Organized Crime Incorporated, which is what the Federal Reserve is.
Well, when you say Jewish, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because we don't want to alienate Jews. It's whoever these people are. I like to separate them because I'm sure that most everyone that we know that's Jewish has nothing
to do with the Jewish elite.
So when you call it a Jewish organized crime, we could say the mafia was, or Meyer Lansky and all these reputed gangland guys were also Jewish. Oh, well.
They were. One of the funniest memes right now going around is it shows a picture of Tony Soprano of The Sopranos holding his hand out, and he's saying, all I'm saying, Carmela, is if the I in AIPAC stood for Italian, they'd be calling it a mafia organization, and nobody'd be sending billions of dollars worth of military aid to Italy. We couldn't get away with that shite.
Yeah.
But they do.
That was well done, that shite. I like that. So what is your path? I mean, right now, if I said, here we have a forum, what subjects are going on now? Can you take some of these things that happened before, and do you relate them to what's happening now, or do you see things happening now?
It's a continuation. It's our perceived that things are slowing down or drying away and new subjects are popping up, but I don't see that. Another thing I've said often is, I thought I'd change my name to Federal Reserve. If they can blow up the World Trade Center and get away with it, I'll call myself Federal Reserve and see what I can get away with. Another thing is when your name is Federal Reserve, the Internal Revenue Service and numerous other government agencies lose all interest in talking to you at all, period.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, they figure you're there to give it to them. That's very interesting.
And touching on that, a lot of people don't understand, or the ones that know something's wrong with 9/11, they realize this is an Israeli state-sponsored gold heist. It's not just to get people chipped. It was also a gold heist. The COMEX exchange underneath both buildings got emptied. While we were looking up, they unloaded the train. They loaded all the bars into trains.
This is before before it fell.
Once the last cart went out, they pulled the buildings down, and in this big billowing cloud of dust, a large container ship sailed out of port unnoticed. Now, this wasn't done for monetary value. For the Moshiach, I guess, to return.
Mashiach, meaning the Messiah.
Yeah, the Jewish version of Jesus. For him to return, they need to rebuild a third temple out of gold. So this was a theft of a building material, not gold for the monetary value. And we see now in Israel a third temple's in the works.
But I can't imagine it's made of gold.
I can't imagine a lot of things, but that's
very interesting. I mean, it'd be interesting to pursue and look at. But fact is, whatever sailed away, it didn't seem to matter because we're not on a gold standard, which was very confusing to our world. And we're, now we talk about currencies and is there anything backing them up? And we're the biggest culprit of all.
Exactly.
I mean, the biggest of all.
By a country mile.
And here we keep supporting the support of the dollar, again, because what do you fill the void with? It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
I'd like to see Hawaii develop its own currency. Ideally, at the start of the United States, each state was its own country and had its own currency. There was Kansan dollars, there was New York dollars, there was, there's these numerous currencies, and this was obviously confusing, especially exchanging, once we all started traveling a lot more and faster. So I could see the dollar being brought under a unification, as it were. But when Nixon undid the gold standard, that was the handing of control over to foreign interests. And
we all know that. We all remember that 1972. I don't know why I would remember that, except even then it was like, well, if you don't back it with gold, how do we create value and be able to somehow reconcile this all?
We do exactly.
Our whole world is now
Adolf
based
Hitler did.
On mirrors and shadows, and that's what Adolf Hitler did.
Winston Churchill said, if Adolf Hitler's monetary system catches on, it will be the end of the Rothschilds. And so, before World War II, Hitler was drowning in debt, or Germany was drowning in debt. He issued a Deutschmark that was based on an hour of German labor, not foreign gold holdings. And that's the correct direction to go for each country. Base your dollar on the value of your country's workmen's work.
Oh, and I would like to think resources that are somehow isn't that some of value? I mean, to put out work, and I want to say it might take physical form in some way besides the physical labor, because some people can't work. But there'd be some value in trade that's somehow tangible and tied to.
And we know this. When we've worked really hard, that's the value in it. Your end product. So I work all day building a house or whatever. There's the value. Or fixing a car. It's when your car is fixed, man, it feels great. There's a lot of value in that. You can't see it and feel it and touch it or dig it out of a hole, but it's still there.
Right.
Whereas what we have now is a debt-based system, and debt slavery is still slavery.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have seen their lives reduced to work, pay a few bills, work. And then the internet's come along and now said, we are now able to work, and we don't have to go anywhere to work. And we take all our jobs and we export them. And so I'm worried, to tell you the truth, that it's hard to recoup from where we've gone.
And we're not going to. We're going to have to go forward. And forward is the form of, like Andrew Yang is saying, a universal basic income. And automation is going to employ more people than we can imagine. I mean, already you're doing away with cashiers and checkers. It won't be long before fast food restaurants don't have any people inside.
So we have to figure out how to get people to focus more on maybe their spiritual growth, maybe in service to each other in some way that's going to create a greater place and an understanding between people. Because the work is getting handled, and it's almost like, why do we need people?
One of the things the United States suffers that no other country does is sickness and injury for profit. This has created a monster called the insurance industry.
Oh.
And it extends into a great many lives, aspects of life. No country in the world does the police pull you over and say, where's your gambling certificate, which is what I call proof of insurance. When you purchase insurance, you're placing a wager against yourself. You're betting against yourself. I'm going to get in a car crash today, and every day you don't wreck your car, they win the bet. And that's the way insurance works. Now, when you apply that towards sickness and injury, you lose all moral basis. We don't fix this or that injury because they have money. We fix it because this person's hurt. And,
well, someone might say, well, that's socialism. You've heard these descriptions.
Yeah, they're trying to demonize socialism.
They demonize things that are progressive social responsibility.
Socialism,
they call it evil.
Yeah, it's taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. Socialism is if we didn't have socialism, the fire department would only put out rich people's fires. But I really get that. There's a simple analogy is, no, we don't have a problem with socialism. It's a very good thing. But
I am just really, as I'm sitting here with you, I'm thinking, you have so much information. I guess you sometimes can put off people by your Federal Reserve name because you seem like a regular guy. You meant, when you say something about Jewish, you don't find me having a problem saying, well, let's clearly identify. Well, you want to make enemies for
Jason,
no other
you're not
reason.
even remotely related to the people who wired the demolition of the World Trade Center.
I'm amazed.
If you knew them, you'd citizens arrest them right quick, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would.
Yep, and I'd be there helping you.
Thank you. Well, I'm actually very glad that I brought you on my show. I don't know how else to get information out to the public other than have a forum like this. And I guess the word is you're not insisting, you're offering information, which I think is appropriate.
And the other thing was we need to change our government here in the United States. It needs to be dealt with. There's a lot of criminality gone for many years. The changing the name to Federal Reserve was a lead by example thing. So if every person the police pulled over and whipped out their ID was named Federal Reserve, they'd lose their mind.
That would be a funny thing to see.
Kind of a Fight Club type sort of initiative without the violence.
What do you do? I mean, before you were doing this, you had a family in New Zealand. Were you a farmer? Were you
I spoke fluent Japanese, and I got a visa to sell kit homes from New Zealand to Japan and South Korea. I spoke a fair bit of Korean at one time, too. I seem to have forgotten a lot of it. But, yeah, they didn't have anyone... I guess they didn't have anyone of Japanese descent in New Zealand who wanted the job, but there was a position in a timber company in New Plymouth, New Zealand, and I fit the bill, and everything worked out nicely.
What do you think we're going to do here for affordable housing? You have any easy solutions? Or even hard ones?
We need to institute rent controls. There's... if people paying rent right now have nothing left to live with or buy groceries or anything, the rent just sucks up the... everything so bad. And we've had a lot of overvaluation for decades. This has caused a tremendous problem because it's an island. You're restricted on supply, and so this scarcity is what drives demand. And
this scarcity is when I was talking about the government here.
Yep.
They're pushing back issues that are really important to the people that live here and focus on ways they can make money. And well, probably the best job around is a successful real estate agent.
Correct.
You have to have clients, but how many of those people really live here? Smaller
this is
and
another
smaller
thing.
numbers.
When I lived in Japan, I was always asked, why do you Americans allow this? Many times, a variety of things, because we wouldn't allow the Japanese bought Universal Studios while I was there. And he said, why would you allow us to come and buy all your movie studios out from under you? And another thing Noji had said was, I commented on 22-foot-long heart core pieces of tongue and groove redwood. This is only available from the center of the tree. And he said, oh, back in the 50s and 60s, you sold us all these redwood trees in Northern California, and we cut them down, brought them over here, and stuck them in the mud in Tokyo Bay. When we need nice wood, we pull them up and mill them, and there you have it. You couldn't come here and buy our trees. Why would you allow us to do that?
It is amazing how the world looks at us in wonderment.
Yeah.
We only have about a minute left. Federal Reserve, I'd like you to kind of sum up, if you will. I'm going to give you a forum if there's anything that you'd like to say that we've left out that you feel important you want to deliver.
Well, I think one of our most important things we could do today is to deal with Monsanto on this island. It's posing a threat to everyone's health. They're changing their name to Bayer doesn't change what's going on, what's happening. The people that work there need to show a bit of spine and say, I've, as bad as I need money, I got to find a job somewhere else. They need to be boycotted, or bar that, a bunch of angry mothers go occupy their joint, or the police enforce the informed consent laws.
We are running out of time. I hope that you'll go up to our website and pull down some information and look at this again and look at some of our shows. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to hit our little jingle here again.
Thank you, Jason.
I don't hear it, but that's because it may not be playing, but you'll see it on TV. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. Aloha.